It was supposed to be the happiest day of the year, at least for my little boy. The 7th birthday of your child is no small thing in the world of American suburbia. Parents compete silently with one another as if each balloon, each cake layer, each rented bouncy house were some measure of how much love you truly have for your kid. I never thought of myself as the competitive type, but that Saturday morning, while I was taping the last streamer across the sliding glass door, I realized I had spent weeks obsessing over every detail of this party. We lived in a quiet cul-de-sac outside of Indianapolis, where every lawn was neatly cut and every mailbox looked exactly the same. But today, our house had been transformed into a carnival of blue and red decorations. The backyard held a rented bounce castle, the kind that towered above the fence line, its bright colors visible even to neighbors 2 houses down. A magician was scheduled to arrive at noon. The cupcakes had little superhero figurines on top, and the centerpiece, a massive 3-layer cake shaped like a race car, sat protected inside the refrigerator, waiting to be revealed. "Dad, can I go outside yet?" Ethan's voice carried down the hall. My son's enthusiasm had me grinning even though I was exhausted. He'd been up since 6, pacing the living room in his little Spider-Man pajamas, begging to see his friends. Ethan was small for his age, but quick, with a laugh that could break apart even the heaviest day. I loved him more than I had ever loved anything, and all I wanted was for him to feel special. "Not yet, champ," I called back. "Give me 10 more minutes. Your mom's helping with the balloons." I peeked into the dining room. My wife, Claire, stood on a chair, knotting a string of helium balloons together. She wore a light summer dress, her long blonde hair tucked behind her ears. She looked beautiful, and for a moment I felt lucky. Lucky in the way people write about in those glossy magazine stories, married young, built a home, had a child, and managed to keep the love alive. Or at least, that's what I thought. Claire caught me watching and smiled. "Stop staring and get the plates out, mister." "Yes, ma'am," I teased, walking into the kitchen. By 11:30, the backyard was alive with laughter and shrieks. The magician had already made a dove appear out of thin air, a feat that left the kids wide-eyed and the parents politely clapping. Ethan bounced until he was breathless, his hair plastered to his forehead, his cheeks red with joy. Neighbors I barely spoke to on ordinary days stopped me to say what a fantastic party it was. "This is the kind of memory he'll never forget," one of the moms said. I believed her. At that moment, looking at Ethan dive into a pile of wrapping paper, I believed everything was exactly as it should be. But then the front gate creaked open. I noticed first because the dog barked. Then I saw the figure, a man, tall, broad-shouldered, walking with a strange mixture of hesitation and certainty, as though he had rehearsed this moment but still wasn't sure if he belonged here. He wore a plain button-down shirt, sleeves rolled, and his dark hair was slicked back. There was something unsettling about him. He wasn't just another neighbor wandering in. He was coming with purpose. I frowned, assuming at first he must be one of the dads from Ethan's school I hadn't met. I started toward him, ready to extend a hand, but he didn't look at me. His eyes searched the yard until they landed on Claire. The smile on her face collapsed. The balloon string slipped from her hand. And I swear, in that single moment, the entire party shifted. The chatter dulled. The magician faltered mid-trick, and Claire's knuckles went white against the edge of the table. The man cleared his throat loud enough for everyone to hear. His voice carried across the yard like a stone thrown into still water. "I'm here for my son." At first I thought he meant it figuratively, like some dad who hadn't seen his kid in a while, maybe an ex-husband of one of the moms. But then he stepped closer, pointing not at the cake, not at the crowd of children, but directly at Ethan. "My son," he repeated, his tone sharper now. "I'm his real father." Silence fell so thick it pressed against my ears. Ethan froze mid-step, clutching the toy car he'd just unwrapped. His eyes darted from me to the stranger, confusion clouding his small face. And Claire? She didn't deny it. She didn't laugh it off or tell the man to leave. She just stood there, pale as paper, her lips trembling as though words had abandoned her entirely. The ground seemed to vanish beneath me. The parents shifted uncomfortably, whispering, exchanging glances. Someone's phone camera clicked, the faint sound of a picture being taken, a scandal worth capturing. "Excuse me?" I managed to say, though my throat was dry. "Who the hell are you?" The man straightened his shoulders. "My name's Daniel, and I think you know exactly who I am." I didn't. Not at all. But the way Claire lowered her eyes told me she did. For a long second, nobody moved. The sun still beat down on the backyard, music still played faintly from the speakers, but the air was heavy with something darker than any storm I'd ever stood in. Daniel, if that was his name, stood there like he owned the ground beneath his shoes. My son's birthday party, our home, our friends and neighbors as witnesses. And this man had just shattered the illusion of family with a single sentence. I forced a laugh that came out strangled. "You must be out of your damn mind. This is my son's party. You need to leave." But Daniel didn't move. His gaze stayed locked on Ethan, softening in a way that made my stomach twist. "Hey, buddy," he said gently, like he already knew him. "You don't know me yet, but you will. I'm your real dad." Ethan's face crumpled with confusion. He clutched the toy tighter, stepping back toward Claire. "Mom?" That single word, his tiny voice searching for clarity, cut me deeper than any knife. Claire finally spoke, but it wasn't the defense I expected. Not a denial, not a laugh, not an angry shout, telling this man to get off our property. Instead, her voice trembled. "Daniel, not here. Please." The crowd reacted before I could. Murmurs rose like a tide. Parents whispered into each other's ears. Kids stopped mid-bounce in the castle. The magician lowered his wand like a soldier surrendering. Everyone knew they had just stumbled into something raw and ugly. Infidelity laid bare in broad daylight. My jaw tightened. "Claire," I said slowly, every word a stone I forced past my teeth. "Who is this?" She looked at me, and for the first time in years, she couldn't hold my stare. He's someone I used to know." "Someone you used to know?" My laugh was bitter, jagged. "He just walked into our backyard and called himself my son's father. You think I'm buying that?" Daniel stepped forward, fists clenching at his sides. "You don't have to buy anything, man. Facts are facts. Claire and I, we were together before and after you got married. Ethan is mine. Look at him. You can't tell me you don't see it." My vision tunneled. My fists itched. Every instinct in me screamed to knock the smugness off his face. But then, against my will, my eyes flicked to Ethan. His brown eyes, Claire's eyes. His chin, sharp and narrow, not like mine. I'd brushed it off before, those whispers of doubt late at night when I stared too long at him sleeping. But now, under the scrutiny of this intruder, every difference burned like gasoline poured onto fire. The guests pretended not to stare, but they were all watching. Every single one of them. Moms biting their lips, dads shifting awkwardly, kids sensing the tension. Our perfect suburban celebration had become a public trial. "Get the hell out," I barked at Daniel, my voice loud enough to make Ethan flinch. "No," Daniel shot back, equally fierce. "Not until I see my boy." "Your boy?" I stepped closer, rage vibrating through me. "He doesn't know you. He doesn't want to know you. You're nothing but some bastard crashing a kid's party." Claire stepped between us, her hands raised as if we were wild animals about to collide. "Stop, both of you. Please, stop." Her voice cracked. "Mom?" Ethan whispered again, this time louder, panic seeping in. "What's going on? Who is he?" She knelt to his level, brushing his hair back, eyes wet. "Sweetheart, I promise I'll explain later, okay? Not now." That answer was no answer at all. I felt the ground give way beneath me, reality cracking open. She wasn't denying it. Not once had she said, "This man is lying." She wasn't even trying to shield me. I turned on her, my voice low and dangerous. "Tell me the truth, Claire, right here, right now." She looked at Ethan, then at me, and finally at Daniel. Her silence was the loudest confession I'd ever heard. The neighbors knew it too. I saw it in their eyes, the pity, the hunger for gossip. They'd be talking about this for years, the scandal at the birthday party. I was no longer the man with the nice lawn and the good job. I was the fool, the betrayed husband who didn't see the knife until it was twisted. Daniel smirked slightly, as though her silence was his victory. "I'll be back," he said finally, his voice calm, almost promising. "You can't keep me from him forever." He turned and walked out through the gate, leaving the backyard in stunned silence. For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then, slowly, conversations erupted in hushed tones, parents gathering their kids, pretending to smile as though everything were fine. The magician packed up silently. The bounce castle operator avoided my eyes, and within 15 minutes, the backyard emptied. All that remained were half-deflated balloons, unopened gifts, and the echoes of laughter that had turned to whispers. I stood in the middle of it all, my son clinging to Claire's dress, my wife refusing to meet my gaze. The birthday cake still waited inside the refrigerator, untouched, a grotesque reminder of the celebration that had collapsed. And all I could think was, my life just ended in front of everyone I knew. The house smelled faintly of frosting and rubber balloons the next morning, but to me it reeked of humiliation. I stood in the kitchen staring at the untouched birthday cake still shoved in the refrigerator. The bright red frosting that was supposed to symbolize joy now looked grotesque, like a clown's painted grin mocking me. Claire moved quietly through the house, avoiding me, as though silence could patch over the crack that had split open yesterday. Ethan was upstairs playing with his toys, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around him, though I knew kids sensed more than they let on. I poured myself coffee I didn't want. The bitterness sat on my tongue like ashes. Finally I spoke, my voice sharp in the silence. "You didn't deny it." Claire froze by the sink. She kept her back to me, her shoulders stiff. "Not in front of Ethan," she said quietly. "Not in front of Ethan?" I barked. "Not in front of the neighbors, the parents, the entire damn community watching? He said he was Ethan's real father, Claire, and you just stood there." Her head dropped. What was I supposed to do? Say he's lying. My hand slammed the counter, rattling the coffee mug. "Tell me it's not true. Tell me my son is mine." Her silence stretched like barbed wire between us. Finally she whispered, "I don't know if he is." The world tilted. My vision narrowed. I gripped the counter until my knuckles went white, trying not to collapse under the weight of that confession. "You don't know?" My voice cracked. "We've been married almost a decade. We've raised him together for 7 years. And you don't know?" She turned slowly, tears streaking her face. "I made a mistake. It was only once. I thought. I didn't think." "Don't you dare say you didn't think," I snapped. "You thought enough to keep it a secret for 7 years. You thought enough to let me believe Ethan was mine. You let me—" My voice broke. "You let me love him as if he was my blood." She covered her mouth, sobbing. "I didn't want to lose you." I laughed bitterly. "Lose me? Congratulations, Claire. You might have just managed exactly that." That week felt like walking through glass barefoot. Every step cut deeper. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers. I could see curtains twitching when I left for work, hear hushed voices stop mid-sentence when I walked into the grocery store. People didn't need to ask questions. They already had the story. At work, I found myself staring blankly at spreadsheets, unable to focus. My coworkers gave polite nods, but even they had probably heard something by now. News like that spread faster than fire in a dry forest. Nights were worse. I lay awake next to Claire, the silence between us deafening. Sometimes I'd watch Ethan sleep, his small chest rising and falling, and feel my heart split in two. I loved him, but doubt gnawed at me like a parasite. Was I his father, or just the man raising another man's child? One evening, I found myself pulling out old photo albums. There was Ethan at 2, grinning with cake smeared across his cheeks. At 4, holding a toy fire truck. At 5, his first soccer game. Each photo filled me with pride, and then with dread. I studied his features obsessively, searching for myself in the curve of his smile, in the tilt of his nose. Sometimes I swore I saw me. Other times I saw only Claire. And worse, the ghost of Daniel's face lingered in the back of my mind. I remembered subtle moments I had brushed aside before, the way Claire once flinched when a dark-haired man walked past us at the mall. Her vague explanations about working late when she didn't even have a job that required late nights. The time she got a text that made her face pale, and she said it was just spam. Individually, they had seemed insignificant. Together, they formed a mosaic of betrayal. The whispers grew louder. My mother called from Ohio, her voice tight. "Honey, I heard something. Is it true?" I had no answer for her. Ethan, sweet boy that he was, sensed the tension. One night at dinner, he looked at me and asked, "Dad, are you mad at Mom?" I froze with the fork halfway to my mouth. "No, buddy, I'm not mad at you, and that's all that matters." But I was lying. I was mad at everyone, at Claire, at Daniel, at myself for not seeing it sooner. And beneath it all was a question that haunted me relentlessly. What if Daniel was telling the truth? The doubt was no longer just a whisper. It was a roar in my head. The following Saturday, I found myself parked outside a Walgreens pharmacy, staring at the glowing red letters. Inside on the shelves were DNA test kits. I had never thought I'd be the man standing in line for one of those, like some cliché from a trashy daytime talk show. But there I was, heart pounding, palms sweaty, shame burning through me. I didn't buy it that day. I couldn't bring myself to. But the idea lodged in my chest like a splinter. Back home, I caught Claire watching me nervously, as if she knew what I was thinking. She said nothing, but her eyes begged for mercy she didn't deserve. And Ethan? He just wanted his parents to stop acting so strange. But doubt doesn't stop. Doubt grows. Doubt poisons. And mine had only just begun. The nights were the worst. The stillness of the house, the sound of the refrigerator humming in the kitchen, the faint creaks of the old wood settling, it all left too much room for my thoughts. Claire slept restlessly beside me, or at least pretended to. I could hear her uneven breathing, the occasional shift of her body, but she never reached for me anymore. I would lie there staring at the ceiling, playing back every conversation we'd ever had, every laugh, every fight, every moment when she slipped away for just a little too long. Suddenly, the timeline of our marriage didn't feel linear anymore. It was fragmented, riddled with shadows. I remembered the night Ethan was born. I had been so overwhelmed, proud, terrified, in awe of the tiny life placed in my arms. Claire had cried too, but now I wondered if her tears had been joy or guilt. Did she look at me then and know the secret she was keeping? The more I thought, the more the memories betrayed me. Like the time Ethan had his tonsils out and Daniel's face, though I hadn't known it then, had appeared in the hospital waiting room, just for a second. I thought he was a stranger passing by. Now I wondered if he'd been watching, hovering, daring to get close even then. I couldn't escape it. Doubt wasn't just a shadow anymore. It was a storm cloud blocking every trace of sunlight. At church the following Sunday, the whispers followed us even there. The pastor's words blurred into nothing as I caught the sideways glances, the pitying smiles, the sharp-eyed curiosity of people who thrived on gossip disguised as prayer. After service, an older woman I barely knew leaned close and said, "Honey, kids don't always turn out looking like their parents. Don't let people get in your head." Her words, meant kindly, felt like acid, because they proved that everyone was indeed talking. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. Claire sat beside me, silent, her hands folded in her lap. Ethan hummed in the back seat, oblivious. "Do you even care?" I finally exploded, my voice sharp. "Do you even realize what this is doing to me?" Claire turned her head, her eyes glassy. "Do you think this isn't tearing me apart too? I made a mistake years ago, and I've been living in fear of this moment every day since." "Fear?" I spat the word. "You should have confessed, not waited until some guy waltzed into our son's birthday party and detonated our lives in front of the neighborhood." She didn't answer. She just stared out the window, her reflection fractured by the glass. That night I called my best friend Mark. He lived 2 states away, but had known me since college. I hadn't planned to tell him, but when he asked how the party went, the words spilled out before I could stop them. There was a long silence on the other end. Then he said, "Man, I don't even know what to say. That's brutal." "Brutal doesn't cover it," I muttered. "I feel like I'm losing my mind." "You need to find out the truth," Mark said firmly. "Don't torture yourself with what-ifs. Get the DNA test. At least then you'll know what you're up against." His words echoed long after I hung up. "At least then you'll know." The next day I went back to Walgreens. This time I walked straight to the aisle and grabbed the kit off the shelf. My hand shook as I carried it to the register. The cashier scanned it without comment, but I imagined judgment in her eyes all the same. At home, I tucked the box under my jacket and carried it upstairs like contraband. Claire saw it immediately when I walked in. Her face drained of color. "You bought it," she whispered. I met her gaze, my voice like stone. "I have to know." She started to cry, reaching for me. "Please, don't do this. It'll destroy us." I pulled away. "What's left to destroy, Claire? You already broke us." The argument spiraled from there, voices rising, Ethan calling from his room, asking if everything was okay. I had to swallow my fury, tuck it down deep, and tell him we were just talking loudly. But in truth, it wasn't talking. It was war, fought with words sharp enough to scar. Late that night, after Claire had shut herself in the guest room, I sat at the kitchen table with the DNA kit in front of me. The instructions were simple. A swab inside Ethan's cheek, a swab of mine, mail it in, wait. It should have been easy. But my hands trembled so badly I couldn't even open the box. Because here was the truth I hadn't wanted to admit. Part of me didn't want the answer. What if Ethan wasn't mine? What if the boy I'd rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, kissed goodnight every evening for 7 years? What if he wasn't my son? I didn't know if my heart could survive that. And yet I knew what Mark said was true. I couldn't live in limbo forever. So with shaking hands, I opened the box. I didn't know what the results would say, but I knew one thing for certain. The moment I dropped that test into the mailbox, my life would never be the same again. The DNA kit was in the mail, but the waiting was unbearable. Every tick of the clock felt like a hammer striking down on my sanity. Days stretched into long corridors of suspicion, and I couldn't walk through my own house without feeling like every corner whispered a lie. I started digging. It began with Claire's phone. One night, while she was in the shower, I picked it up. My hands were clammy, heart racing like a teenager, sneaking into forbidden territory. I told myself I had the right. Hell, I deserved to know. The phone was locked, of course, but Claire had never been careful with passwords. I tried Ethan's birthday. Wrong. Our anniversary. Wrong. Then, with a bitterness that almost made me laugh, I tried Daniel. The screen unlocked. My stomach dropped. I didn't want to believe it, but there it was. Messages buried deep in an app she thought I'd never check. Threads of conversation stretching back months, maybe years. I scrolled until my eyes blurred, reading words that seared themselves into my brain. I miss you. When can I see you again? He doesn't know, does he? No, he suspects nothing. And worse, photos. Nothing explicit, but enough. Smiles too intimate, arms around shoulders, a kiss stolen in the shadow of a parking lot. The kind of photos that carried betrayal in every pixel. I sat there in the dim light of our bedroom, the sound of water running in the bathroom, holding her phone like it was a weapon. Because it was. Every message, every photo was another bullet to the chest. When she came out wrapped in a towel, hair damp, she froze the second she saw me holding it. "Where did you get that?" she demanded, voice trembling. I looked at her with eyes I no longer recognized as my own. How long? Her lips parted, but no words came. She clutched the towel tighter, as though fabric could shield her from the truth unraveling around her. "How long, Claire?" I pressed, louder now. "Don't you dare lie to me again." She sank onto the edge of the bed, tears spilling freely. "Since before Ethan was born." The words hit like a wrecking ball. I staggered back, breath knocked from me. "Before? You mean when you were pregnant?" Her sob was answer enough. I slammed the phone down on the dresser, the crack of plastic echoing through the room. "So all this time, all these years, you let me believe—" My voice broke into a roar. "You let me believe he was mine." Claire crumpled, burying her face in her hands. "I was scared. I didn't know who the father was. I wanted it to be you. I prayed it was you." I laughed, a hollow, broken sound. "Prayed? While you were sneaking around with him for 7 years?" She shook her head frantically. "It wasn't constant. I tried to end it, I swear. But every time I thought I was done, he came back. I was weak. I didn't know how to stop." "Don't call it weakness," I snapped. "Call it what it is. Cheating, infidelity, betrayal." The word hung in the air like poison gas. Claire reached for me, but I recoiled as if her touch burned. "I love you," she whispered. "Love?" My voice was a blade. "Love doesn't do this. Love doesn't lie for 7 years. Love doesn't let another man walk into my son's birthday party and claim him as his own." She sobbed harder, shaking, broken, but I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. My heart was a battlefield littered with the corpses of every promise she had ever made. That night, I slept on the couch. Or rather, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, phone clutched in my hand, scrolling through those messages again and again like picking at a wound. Each word cut deeper, each photo another betrayal carved into my memory. And in the silence of the dark, one truth rang louder than all the rest. If the DNA test confirmed Daniel's claim, my entire life had been a lie. The following days, I started watching her differently. Every time Claire left the house, I tracked the time she was gone. Every phone call she made behind closed doors sent alarms through my brain. I checked mileage on her car, receipts in her purse, even her calendar. It wasn't paranoia. It was survival. One afternoon, while she was at the store, I sat at her desk rifling through old papers. Buried under tax forms and bank statements, I found a letter. It was creased, worn, like it had been read and reread. "One day, we'll be a family, the way we're supposed to be. You, me, and Ethan. I promise." It was signed with Daniel's name. My hand shook so violently, I nearly tore the paper in half. Rage boiled in me, but beneath it, fear. Because the words weren't just fantasy. They were intent. Daniel didn't see himself as a fling or a mistake. He saw himself as Ethan's rightful father. And Claire, she hadn't thrown the letter away. She'd kept it. That evening, I confronted her again, letter in hand. She paled when she saw it. "Why do you still have this?" I demanded. She swallowed hard. "I don't know. I couldn't throw it away." Couldn't throw it away? Or didn't want to? Her eyes flooded with tears. "It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I snarled. "You've been living two lives, a marriage on one side, a secret affair on the other. And I've been the fool smiling through it all." Claire dropped to her knees, clutching my hand, desperate. "Please, please don't give up on us. I'll end it for good. I'll do whatever it takes." But all I could see were the words, "One day we'll be a family," and the terrifying thought that maybe, just maybe, Daniel wasn't bluffing. The letter sat on the kitchen table between us like a live grenade. Claire had stopped begging. Her sobs had quieted into silence, her eyes hollow, her hands limp in her lap. But my rage didn't fade. It simmered, burning slow and hot, searing me from the inside out. I stared at her and said, "You weren't weak. You were calculated. You built a life with me while building a fantasy with him. That's not weakness, Claire. That's betrayal." She shook her head slowly. "You don't understand." "Then make me understand," I snapped. "Make me understand how a wife cheats on her husband, brings another man's child into our marriage, and still has the audacity to talk about love." Her lips trembled. "Daniel made me feel alive. I hated myself for it. But he was exciting. You were steady, safe. He was—" "Don't finish that sentence." I cut her off, my voice sharp enough to slice. "Don't you dare stand there and tell me I was too good to you, too steady. You think I want to hear that you needed danger to feel alive, that our family wasn't enough?" Claire broke down again, clutching at her hair as if she could rip the shame from her scalp. "I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I couldn't let go." But I knew. She didn't stop because she didn't want to. The next week was a nightmare of half-truths and gaslighting. One night she swore it was over, that Daniel meant nothing. The next, I caught her staring at her phone like a woman starving, waiting for a text she couldn't admit she wanted. I started tailing her, not like a detective in a movie, but like a desperate husband clinging to the last threads of sanity. She said she was going grocery shopping. I checked the mileage on her car. She said she was going for a walk. I watched from the window, counting the minutes until she came back. Every move was a chess piece, every excuse another mask. And then came the night I followed her. She told me she was meeting a friend for coffee. But something in her voice cracked, like a bad actor in a high school play. I waited 5 minutes, then got in my car and drove. I saw her silver SUV parked outside a cheap motel off the interstate. My chest caved in. My hands gripped the steering wheel until it hurt. Through the neon glare of the motel sign, I watched her step out of the car. A minute later, Daniel appeared from the shadows. They didn't kiss, not openly, but the way she moved toward him, like a moth to a flame, like muscle memory, was enough. They disappeared into a room together, the door shutting with a finality that echoed inside me louder than any slam. I didn't go in. I didn't scream or fight or drag her out by the wrist. I just sat in my car, staring at that closed door, feeling every piece of my world disintegrate. Because in that moment, I understood the truth. She hadn't chosen me in years. Maybe she never had. When she came home that night, she found me sitting at the kitchen table, the motel's address scrawled on a napkin in front of me. Her face went white. "You followed me," she whispered. "You lied to me," I shot back. She sank into a chair across from me, trembling. "It's not what it looked like. Don't insult me," I barked. "Don't sit there and tell me you were knitting scarves in that motel room." Her silence was admission enough. "Why, Claire?" My voice cracked, raw. "Why him? Why keep going back?" She wept openly, her face blotchy. "Because he makes me feel wanted. Because he says things you don't." I slammed my fist against the table so hard the napkin fluttered to the floor. I worked my ass off for this family. I gave you a home, a son, stability. And you threw it all away for what? Cheap thrills in a roadside motel? She covered her ears, sobbing, but I didn't stop. Years of repressed suspicion and anger poured out of me like poison from an open wound. You let me raise him. You let me call him mine. Every birthday, every Christmas, every bedtime story, you let me believe I was his father. And now I don't even know if my son is my son. The last word echoed through the house, so loud that Ethan padded into the hallway in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes. Dad? I froze, my rage colliding with guilt. I rushed to him, kneeling down. It's okay, buddy. Go back to bed. He looked between me and Claire, confusion clouding his little face. Are you gonna leave? My throat tightened. I forced a smile that felt like it might break my jaw. No, champ, I'm right here. But even as I said it, I knew the lie in my own words. That night, after Ethan fell asleep, I sat in the dark living room, staring at the walls. My hands trembled, my chest ached, but my mind was cold, calculating. There was no escaping it now, no pretending, no hoping this storm would pass. Claire had betrayed me. Daniel was circling, emboldened, and Ethan, sweet, innocent Ethan, was caught in the middle. The DNA test was still pending, but deep down, I already knew. And the truth wasn't just coming. It was here. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. It was small, unassuming, almost ordinary. Just a white rectangle with my name typed neatly across the front. But the second I saw it in the mailbox, my knees nearly buckled. This wasn't paper. This was a verdict. I carried it inside like it was radioactive. My hand shook as I set it on the kitchen counter. Claire saw it the moment she walked in from the laundry room, her face drained of color. Is that? Yes. My voice was flat, dead. It's here. We stared at it in silence, the weight of 7 years pressing down on us. Ethan was at school. Thank God. He didn't need to witness this. Claire reached out as if to touch the envelope, then pulled her hand back like it might burn her. Maybe we don't have to open it. I laughed bitterly. That's the difference between you and me. You'd rather live in lies. I want the truth. My fingers tore through the paper before she could protest. Inside was a single sheet, black and white, clinical. No emotions, no hesitation, just results. I scanned the words, my eyes blurring. Then they sharpened, locking onto the one line that mattered. Probability of paternity, 0%. The paper slipped from my hands and fluttered to the floor. I couldn't breathe. My chest heaved, my vision swam, the room tilted. For a moment, I thought I might actually pass out. Claire gasped softly, pressing her hands to her mouth. Tears welled instantly, spilling down her cheeks. No, I croaked. No, no, no. But denial couldn't rewrite the truth. The boy I had rocked to sleep, taught to ride a bike, called my son for 7 years, wasn't mine. Daniel was right, and my entire life had been a lie. The days after blurred together in a haze of grief and fury. I went through the motions, work, meals, bedtime routines with Ethan, but inside I was hollow. Each time Ethan called me Dad, my heart shattered into sharper fragments. Claire tried to talk. She begged, pleaded, sobbed. She said biology didn't matter, that I was Ethan's father in every way that counted. But the word father had become poison on her lips. One night I snapped. Don't you dare say I'm his father. You stole that from me. You robbed me of the right to know the truth. You let me live a lie. Her face crumpled, but I didn't care. Rage was all I had left to keep from collapsing. Word spread quickly. It always does in small communities. Somehow, people knew. Maybe Claire confided in someone. Maybe Daniel ran his mouth. Maybe gossip just has a way of leaking through cracks like smoke. At the grocery store, I caught people staring. At church, whispers floated behind me like gnats. My coworkers avoided eye contact, their pity palpable. Even my parents called. My mother's voice trembled over the line. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I wish I could take this pain from you." But no one could. And the worst part, the absolute cruelest part, was that Ethan was still innocent. He still looked at me with love, with trust. He still ran into my arms after school, still begged me to read his favorite book at night. Every time I held him close. Every time my chest ached with the truth. He wasn't mine. But try telling that to my heart. My heart didn't care about DNA. My heart only knew that he was my son. Then Daniel came back. It was Saturday afternoon. I was raking leaves in the front yard, trying to lose myself in the monotony, when a black truck pulled into the driveway. Daniel stepped out, casual as ever, like he belonged there. I dropped the rake, fists clenching. "Get the hell off my property." He smirked. "Relax, I'm not here to fight. I just want to see my son." "Your son?" The words nearly choked me. "Yes." He nodded toward the house. "The DNA doesn't lie, man. He's mine. And I'm not going to let you keep me from him." My blood boiled. "You think you can just walk in here after 7 years and play daddy? You're nothing but a homewrecker." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Face it, Claire never stopped loving me. She never will. And Ethan deserves to know who his real father is." I lunged at him, shoving him back against the truck. "You don't get to say his name!" Daniel didn't flinch. He just smiled, infuriatingly calm. "It's only a matter of time. You can't erase me." Before I could break his jaw, the front door opened. Claire's voice cut through the air. "Stop, both of you!" Ethan peeked from behind her legs, wide-eyed. My fury collapsed into guilt. I released Daniel, who straightened his shirt smugly. "This isn't over," he said, before climbing into his truck and driving away. I stood there, chest heaving, while Claire rushed to Ethan, whispering reassurances. But I knew the truth. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. That night the house felt like a coffin. Claire stayed in the guest room, her sobs muffled through the wall. I sat alone at the dining table with a bottle of bourbon, staring at the DNA results spread out in front of me. 0%. The number burned into my eyes. No matter how many times I read it, no matter how much alcohol blurred the edges of the page, it didn't change. My son wasn't mine. And yet, he still was. He was upstairs, sleeping in his bed, dreaming child dreams, clutching the stuffed bear I'd given him on his 3rd birthday. A bear I had chosen, a bear that smelled faintly of me from all the nights I tucked him in. Biology couldn't erase that. But betrayal had a way of making love feel like ash. The next morning, Claire tried again. She approached me in the kitchen, her face pale, her eyes swollen from crying. "We can get through this," she whispered. I laughed bitterly, pouring coffee I didn't want. "Through what, Claire? Through the fact that the last 7 years were built on lies. Through the fact that you let me love a son that wasn't mine while sneaking off with the man who actually was." Her tears spilled again. "Please don't take this out on Ethan. He doesn't know. He doesn't deserve—" "Don't you dare lecture me about Ethan." My voice rose, trembling with rage. "You're the one who made him a pawn in your game. You're the one who built this toxic love triangle and dragged us all into it. Don't act like you're protecting him now." She sobbed, collapsing against the counter. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But apologies were dust. Word spread faster than wildfire. By the next weekend, everyone knew. Parents at Ethan's school avoided my eyes during pickup. Neighbors offered awkward smiles, the kind that masked pity with politeness. At the hardware store, an old friend clapped me on the shoulder. Heard what happened. Tough break, man. I wanted to break his jaw. At church, whispers rose behind me like smoke. I caught phrases. The wife, the affair, the boy, like daggers in the air. I stopped going after that. I couldn't stand the stares. Even my boss pulled me aside at work. If you need some time off, he started gently. Time off? As if betrayal could be healed with a few sick days. Daniel became bolder. He began calling the house. Sometimes he hung up when I answered. Other times he asked to speak to Ethan directly. I refused every time, my voice shaking with fury. Once, I caught him in the school parking lot. He stood leaning against his truck, watching Ethan walk out with his class. When Ethan spotted me and ran into my arms, Daniel smirked, like he was watching a play unfold exactly as he had written it. I wanted to kill him. I wanted to rip him apart for daring to step into my son's world. But more than that, I wanted to know why Claire had let him linger all these years. One night, after Ethan was asleep, I cornered her in the kitchen. "Did you love him?" I asked, my voice low, raw. She froze, her hands trembling around a glass of water. I thought I did, sometimes, but it wasn't the same. "Not the same?" I barked. "You kept him around for 7 years. You lied to me, to our son, to everyone we know. That sounds like love to me." Tears filled her eyes. "It was never love the way I loved you. With him it was, I don't know, passion, escape. Something I couldn't control." I slammed my hand against the counter, making her flinch. "Don't dress it up. Call it what it is. Cheating. Infidelity. You betrayed your family for lust." She broke down again, collapsing into a chair. "I can't take it back. I wish I could. I wish I'd never let it happen." Her sobs filled the kitchen, but they didn't move me. Not anymore. I was numb, hollowed out. The breaking point came when Daniel showed up again, this time at our front door. It was Sunday afternoon. Ethan was in the living room building Lego towers. Claire and I were barely speaking. Then the knock came. I opened the door to find Daniel standing there, smug as ever. "I want to see my son," he said calmly, "over my dead body." Claire appeared behind me, gasping. "Daniel, please, stay out of this," I snapped at her. But Daniel wasn't backing down. He leaned forward, his eyes burning. "You can't keep me from him. I'll take this to court if I have to. DNA proves he's mine. The law's on my side." Rage surged through me so violently I nearly blacked out. I grabbed his shirt front, shoving him back against the porch railing. "If you ever come near my house again, I swear to God—" "Dad?" The word froze me. I turned to see Ethan standing in the doorway, Lego piece clutched in his hand, his little face pale. "What's happening?" Daniel smirked. "Hey, buddy," he said softly, "I'm your real dad." Claire screamed, "Daniel, stop!" But the words were already out. They hung in the air like a bomb detonating, shattering what little innocence Ethan had left. He looked at me, confusion and fear in his eyes. "Dad, what does he mean?" I couldn't answer. My throat closed, my heart broke, because the truth wasn't just mine anymore. It was his, and it was going to change his life forever. The silence after Daniel's words was heavier than any scream. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, his Lego clutched in his small fist, his eyes darting between me, Claire, and Daniel. "Real Dad?" he whispered, his voice trembling. Claire rushed forward, kneeling before him. "Sweetheart, don't listen." But Ethan jerked back, confusion etched across his little face. "Mom, is it true?" Her tears spilled instantly, her silence the loudest answer of all. I stepped forward, my voice breaking. "Ethan, listen to me. I'm your dad. I've always been your dad." Daniel's smirk cut like glass. "You've always been the babysitter. I'm the father." I nearly lunged at him, but Ethan's wide, terrified eyes stopped me. Rage wouldn't save him. He needed stability. He needed the truth, just not like this. "Get out," I growled at Daniel, every muscle in my body trembling. "Before I do something we'll both regret." Daniel raised his hands in mock surrender, backing down the steps. "This isn't over. I'll see you in court." And then he was gone, the sound of his truck fading into the distance. But the damage was done. That night, Ethan refused to eat. He sat in his room, silent, staring at his toys like they no longer belonged to him. When I knocked, he whispered, "I don't know who I am." My chest cracked open. I sat beside him on the bed, pulling him into my arms. "You're Ethan. That's all that matters. You're my son, no matter what anyone says." "But he said—" I pressed my forehead to his. "I don't care what he said. I'm the one who's been here. I'm the one who loves you. That will never change." And he cried into my shirt, and I held him until he fell asleep. But when I laid him down and stepped into the hallway, I saw Claire watching from the shadows. Her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes were filled with something else. Guilt, yes, but also fear, because she knew what was coming. And it came faster than either of us expected. A week later, papers arrived, served right to our door. Daniel was filing for paternity rights. He wanted visitation. He wanted custody. The betrayal had gone from private hell to public war. I slammed the papers onto the table, glaring at Claire. "This is what you've done. You've handed him the ammunition to tear our family apart." She sobbed, clutching her face. "I never thought he'd go this far." "You never thought?" I roared. "You let him in. You fed him hope. You wrote him letters promising a family. And now he wants it." My fists clenched around the papers until they crumpled. "Well, he's not getting it, not without going through me." I hired a lawyer. The consultations were brutal. Cold clinical discussions about custody, DNA, rights, and legal definitions of fatherhood. I sat there, numb, listening to words like biological parent and visitation schedule while my entire world collapsed. The lawyer looked at me grimly. "I'll be honest. Courts tend to side with biological fathers, especially once paternity is established. But your bond with Ethan counts. Judges don't always tear a child away from the man who raised him." I clung to that hope like a drowning man clings to driftwood. Still, rage gnawed at me. Revenge whispered in my ear at night. Why not drag Claire through the mud? Why not expose every detail of her betrayal to the court, to the community, to everyone she ever loved? Why not burn her reputation the way she burned my trust? But then I'd see Ethan's face, his little hands gripping mine, his whispered, "Don't leave me, Dad." And I'd wonder, would revenge save me or destroy him? The first court hearing was chaos. Daniel sat across the room, smug in his tailored suit, his lawyer whispering confidently in his ear. Claire sat beside me, pale and trembling. The judge reviewed the paperwork, his voice monotone. "DNA test confirms Mr. Daniel Whitaker as the biological father." The words stabbed like knives. Even though I already knew, hearing it in that sterile courtroom was like dying all over again. Daniel smiled, but then the judge continued. "However, Mr. Whitaker has had no role in the child's upbringing for the past 7 years. Mr. Ethan Johnson has known Mr. Michael Johnson as his father. The court must consider the best interest of the child." Daniel's smile faltered. For the first time, I felt a flicker of hope. The hearing was postponed, more evaluations ordered. The battle was just beginning. That night I sat alone in the backyard, staring at the swing set I'd built with my own hands. I remembered the day I hammered the final bolt, Ethan bouncing impatiently beside me, asking when it would be ready. I remembered the joy on his face the first time he swung high into the air, shouting, "Look, Dad!" Dad. Not because DNA said so, not because the court recognized it, but because in his heart I was. I realized then that redemption wasn't about forgiving Claire. It wasn't about erasing betrayal. It was about fighting for Ethan, no matter what it cost me. Revenge would satisfy me for a moment, but protecting my son, that would define me forever. The weeks that followed were a blur of court filings, tense conversations, and sleepless nights. My lawyer warned me it could drag on for months. Custody battles are messy, he said, but remember, it's not about punishing Claire or Daniel. It's about protecting Ethan. Protecting Ethan. That became my mantra. Still, the whispers of revenge followed me. When I walked past neighbors who once envied our perfect family, I wanted to shout the truth. When I saw Claire moving quietly through the house, her head bowed, I wanted to hurl every cruel word I could muster. And when Daniel sent smug texts, better get used to sharing him, I wanted to break something, anything. But every time I looked at Ethan, I remembered the promise I'd made the night he cried in my arms. I wouldn't let betrayal define him. The custody evaluator came to our house on a Thursday evening. A middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a clipboard, she asked Ethan questions while I sat helpless in the next room. "Who do you feel safe with?" she asked. "My dad," Ethan said without hesitation. "Which dad?" There was silence. My chest tightened until I could barely breathe. Then Ethan answered softly, "The one who tucks me in every night." I broke down after she left. Because in that moment I realized something. DNA didn't matter. Ethan had chosen me. The second hearing was worse. Daniel's lawyer painted me as controlling, unstable, clinging to a child who wasn't mine. Claire was called to testify. I sat stiffly as she admitted the affair under oath, her voice shaking. Daniel smirked at me across the courtroom like he'd already won. But then the judge asked Ethan's guardian ad litem, the child's court-appointed representative, for her recommendation. She stood, cleared her throat, and said, "Ethan has known only one father for 7 years. Removing him from that bond would cause irreparable harm. While Mr. Whitaker is the biological father, it is the court's recommendation that custody remain with Mr. Johnson, with limited supervised visitation for Mr. Whitaker." Daniel's face twisted with rage. Mine crumbled with relief. Claire sobbed silently beside me. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. After the hearing, Daniel cornered me in the parking lot. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You can't keep him from me forever." I stared him down, voice steady for the first time in weeks. "Watch me. You had 7 years to step up. You didn't. He's my son, not because of DNA, but because I never walked away. That's something you'll never understand." He glared, but he had no answer. He got in his truck and drove off. I haven't seen him since. At home, Ethan crawled into my lap that night, resting his head against my chest. "You're not going anywhere, right?" I kissed the top of his hair, breathing him in. "Never, no matter what happens, I'll always be here." And I meant it. Claire, though, was another story. Our marriage was a battlefield riddled with too many scars. I couldn't look at her without seeing betrayal. I couldn't hear her voice without hearing lies. One night, after Ethan had gone to bed, I told her quietly, "We're done." Her tears flowed, but she didn't argue. She just nodded, as if she'd known this moment was inevitable. "I'll never stop loving you," she whispered. I looked at her, my voice calm. Love doesn't look like betrayal. Love doesn't feel like infidelity. Whatever this was, it's over. She moved out a week later. The months since haven't been easy. Being a single father is harder than I ever imagined. But every struggle is worth it when I hear Ethan's laughter, when I see him run across the yard, when he calls out, "Dad," without hesitation. The betrayal still haunts me. The scars will never fully fade. But I've learned something through all of this. Redemption doesn't come from punishing others. It comes from refusing to let their sins destroy you. Claire lost me. Daniel lost the chance to ever truly be a father. But me? I still have Ethan, and that makes me the winner. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I wonder what would have happened if I'd chosen revenge instead. If I'd burned everything down with fury, exposed every ugly detail, dragged Claire and Daniel through the mud until there was nothing left. It would have felt good for a while. But then I look at Ethan sleeping peacefully, safe, loved, whole, and I know I chose right. Because this story wasn't about me. It was about him. And I'll spend the rest of my life making sure he never doubts who his real father is.